She was shot twice in her own basement on a Wednesday morning, once in the back of the head, once in the stomach. But here's the truly horrifying part. Her killer was standing in her kitchen, wrapped in zip ties, telling police that a masked intruder did it. And for 18 months, he walked free. This is the story of Connie Dabate, a woman so devoted to her family that she drove her son 3 hours to Boston for medical appointments while caring for her dying father. A woman her neighbors called the sunshine of so many lives. And the man who murdered her tried desperately to erase that light forever. But what he didn't count on was technology. What he didn't anticipate was that a tiny device clipped to her hip would become his executioner. I'm your host from Cold Crime Cases, and if you love true crime stories that will keep you thinking long after this video ends, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This community means everything to us. And before we dive deeper into this twisted tale of betrayal and deception, I want to tell you about my book, True Crime Survival Guide: How to Stay Safe in a Dangerous World. This book is especially written for women navigating an unsafe world. You'll find the link in the video description and pinned comment. Now, let's uncover what really happened on December 23rd, 2015. The Perfect Life. Connie Margarata Dabate was born on July 31st, 1976, in Rockville, Connecticut. She was the youngest of 3 children, and her brother Keith would spend his entire life remembering the day their father brought him to the hospital. There she was, held up to the window by a nurse, and in that moment, Connie became the light of their entire family. Growing up in Vernon and Ellington, she wasn't just successful, she was exceptional. Straight-A student, undergrad from the University of Connecticut in 1999, then a pharmaceutical sales career that took her to the top 20% of her company. 3 President's Club awards. But ask anyone who knew her, and they wouldn't describe her by her achievements. They'd describe her by her warmth. On July 4th, 2003, she married Richard Dabate, a computer network administrator 5 years younger than her. Friends said Richard was quirky, technical, reserved. Connie was outgoing, vivacious, the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered. They seemed like opposites, but somehow it worked. They bought a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial home at 7 Birchview Drive in Ellington. 2 sons followed, RJ in 2006 and Connor in 2009. When Connor was born with a cleft lip, Connie became his fiercest advocate, driving him repeatedly to Boston Children's Hospital while simultaneously caring for her own father who was battling leukemia. Motherhood wasn't just her job, it was her mission. In their community, Connie was everything. Vice president of the Ellington Ambulance Corps. She organized fundraisers. She delivered meals to sick neighbors. She was always the first to volunteer. People called her the sunshine of so many lives, and they meant it with every fiber of their being. From the outside, the Dabate family had achieved the dream: beautiful home, successful careers, 2 healthy boys, money in the bank. What could possibly be wrong? The crack in the facade. But by 2015, friends started noticing something shifting. Connie seemed stressed, more stressed than usual. Her colleagues noticed it. Her family noticed it. There was tension in the house now, whispers about money. Richard had developed spending habits that troubled her. He'd take money from accounts without asking. There were charges from a strip club, but that wasn't even the worst part. What Richard was hiding was far more devastating. His name was Sarah Ganza. She and Richard had reconnected as friends after her divorce in 2014. They'd actually known each other since junior high, and there was history, real history. Brief romantic encounters in 2005, 2007, and 2008. All while he was married to Connie. All while he was living a double life. By May 2015, their friendship became something else entirely. 1 month later, Sarah discovered she was pregnant with Richard's child. When she told him, Richard made promises, big promises. "I'm divorcing Connie," he told her. "We can build a future together." Sarah never pushed for it. She told police she was willing to raise the baby alone if necessary, but Richard kept dancing between 2 worlds. In June, he claimed he was preparing for divorce and fixing up the house to sell. By August, he changed his story. Maybe he'd stay with Connie. By November, he was back to promises of divorce again. Sarah was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, trying to plan for her future. And the man she loved kept giving her false hope. Meanwhile, Connie had no idea. No idea about Sarah. No idea about the pregnancy. No idea that her husband was living a completely separate life. What she did know was that something was wrong. On December 23rd at 8:58 in the morning, she messaged a psychotherapist asking for a hypnosis appointment. "There's a lot going on right now," she wrote. Those would be among the last words she'd ever type. Every time someone scrolls past, another woman's suffering fades into silence. Don't let that happen. Subscribe and make her story matter. Richard was suffocating under pressure from all directions. Sarah was 7 months pregnant and growing increasingly frustrated with his broken promises. His cousin Lori would later testify that Richard confided in her about the pregnancy at a party that summer. He was terrified about what his family would think. He told his best friend Seth that he was worried about divorce. In his mind, men lost everything in divorce: the house, custody of the kids, money, respect. He'd seen his comfortable life, the one built on Connie's successful career, disappearing. The walls were closing in on Richard Dabate. A baby on the way with another woman, financial strain, the prospect of custody battles and alimony, the public humiliation when everyone found out he'd been having an affair. The life he'd built was crumbling, and he was panicking. Something had to give, and Richard Dabate was about to make a choice that would shatter multiple lives forever. The morning of December 23, RD. It started like any ordinary Wednesday. The boys were excited about Christmas break, just 2 days away. RJ was 9. Connor was 6. Connie had her regular spinning class at the Indian Valley YMCA, something she did religiously. Richard told police he left for work between 8:30 and 8:40 that morning. He worked as a computer network administrator. He said he drove about 5 minutes before realizing he'd forgotten his laptop, so he turned around to get it. But here's where the digital evidence destroys his alibi completely. At 8:26 a.m., Facebook was accessed from the home computer. At 8:37 a.m., someone searched for long-lasting tattoo ideas from that same computer. This was nearly 10 minutes after Richard claimed to have left. At 8:46 a.m., Connie's Fitbit registered her leaving the house. She wore a Fitbit One clipped to her hip, a tiny device that would meticulously track every single step she took that day. At 8:47 a.m., the home alarm system was armed from Richard's keychain fob. That's crucial. That fob only worked within 500 feet of the house, meaning he was still there. Then, almost immediately, someone tried to disarm the alarm using Richard's mobile phone. It failed the first time, but at 8:51 a.m., the system was successfully disarmed from the phone, then rearmed again. What this sequence proves is devastating. Richard's keychain fob showed he was physically at the house. Then he was trying to manage the alarm remotely from his phone. But the timing was impossible. He couldn't be miles away at work if he was also at home using his keychain fob. At 8:53 a.m., Connie arrived at the YMCA. Security cameras showed her looking cheerful, ready for her workout. But when she got inside, she discovered her spinning class had been canceled. She was there for 15 minutes, then left at 9:08 a.m. She drove back home. At 9:18 a.m., someone visited the YMCA website from Richard's computer at home. Was he checking to see if she'd actually gone? Was he monitoring when she'd return? At 9:23 a.m., Connie's garage door opened. Her Fitbit registered her movements as she got out of her car and entered her house for the last time. If stories like this make you want to protect the innocent and expose the truth, then don't just watch. Subscribe. That single click could be the reason another story finally gets heard. For the next 17 minutes, Connie's Fitbit showed completely normal activity. She was walking around her home, probably doing household tasks, getting ready for the day. At 9:40 a.m., she posted a cheerful video to Facebook from inside her house. 6 minutes later, she posted another video. Both showed she was alive, awake, and using her phone normally. She had no idea what was about to happen. Then at 10:05 a.m., Connie's Fitbit recorded her final steps. 1,217 feet of walking throughout her house. That's far more than the 125 feet between her car and the basement where she'd eventually be found. She was moving around normally. Then at 10:05 a.m. exactly, the Fitbit went silent forever. 7 minutes later, at 10:12 a.m., the home's panic alarm was activated from Richard's keychain fob. The staged crime scene. When police arrived at 7 Birchview Drive, they found a scene designed to deceive. Richard was on the kitchen floor, partially bound to a metal folding chair with zip ties. He had superficial wounds to his legs and torso, and he immediately launched into his story. A masked intruder, he said, dressed in camouflage, with a voice like Vin Diesel. This man was rummaging through Connie's jewelry in their bedroom closet. He demanded money and credit card PIN numbers, which Richard claimed he provided. When Connie came home early, Richard said he shouted for her to run. But instead of running out of the house to safety, she inexplicably ran to the basement. The intruder followed her. They struggled. And the intruder shot her twice, with a gun Richard had purchased just 2 months before. In the basement, investigators found Connie's body. 2 gunshot wounds from a .357 Magnum revolver, one in the back of her head, one in her stomach, a weapon that had never been fired before that day, a weapon bearing no identifiable fingerprints. But experienced investigators immediately saw the problems with this story. No signs of forced entry anywhere in the house, nothing stolen, cash left untouched. 3 separate police K9 units brought to track the intruder's escape route all failed. All 3 dogs failed to pick up any trail leading away from the property. In fact, the first dog, Rocky, kept circling back to Richard. He even tried to jump into the ambulance with him. This scene looked staged, and Richard's behavior seemed odd for someone who just watched his wife be murdered. Imagine if it was your daughter, your sister, or your friend. Would you want their story buried under noise or told with care? Subscribing helps make sure nobody's story fades away. Not ready to subscribe? That's okay, but at least tell me why in the comments. I want to learn from you. What Richard Dabate didn't anticipate was how thoroughly modern technology would document his deception. The Connecticut State Police Eastern District Major Crime Squad, working with prosecutor Matthew G. Dansky, conducted one of the most comprehensive digital forensics investigations in the state's history. The centerpiece was Connie's Fitbit. Dr. Keith Diaz from Columbia University Medical Center had conducted extensive research on Fitbit accuracy. When worn on the hip, these devices are near perfect, 98% accurate for measuring steps. The data was irrefutable. Connie's Fitbit proved she was alive for an entire hour after Richard claimed she'd been killed. He said she died around 9:05 a.m., but the device showed her actively moving around the house until 10:05 a.m., that 1,217 feet of movement. Dr. Diaz testified those were incidental movements. The kind of movements you make doing normal household activities, not the frantic movements of someone running for their life from an intruder. The home alarm system added another layer of evidence. Sophisticated security system with detailed logs of every arming and disarming event. Timestamps showing which method was used, keychain fob or mobile phone. The logs proved Richard had been physically present at the house throughout the morning, repeatedly managing the alarm system, despite his lies about being miles away at work. At 9:04 a.m., Richard sent an email to his supervisor from the home computer claiming he was returning to check on a security alert. But phone data proved he was already at home when he sent that message. He was supposed to be at a bus depot 2 miles away, checking advertising displays. He wasn't. His computer activity painted a damning picture. Facebook visits, Google searches, Microsoft account records showing multiple logins from the home IP address throughout the morning, all corresponding with times he claimed to be elsewhere. Then investigators discovered something even more chilling. Internet searches on Richard's computer from the months before the murder. July 2015, searches for deadly over-the-counter pill combinations. September 2015, fast untraceable homemade poison. Tasteless poison easily available. Detailed information about ricin. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was planned, methodically planned for months. Police interviewed over 20 witnesses. Nearly all of them said the same thing. Connie never mentioned divorce. If anything, she seemed committed to working through their problems. Some noted she was stressed about Richard's spending habits, but nobody heard her talk about leaving him. 18 months passed. 18 months where Richard remained free. 18 months where he continued his relationship with Sarah Ganza. She gave birth to their daughter in February 2016, less than 2 months after Connie's death. Richard's behavior during this time raised red flags everywhere. Days after his wife's murder, he was texting neighbors asking about their favorite takeout restaurants. Friends who came to console a grieving widower found he had no grief to show. His best friend Seth Robertson testified that Richard gave him a rehearsed account of the murder, then moved on to talking about everyday things as if nothing happened. Seth said, "I showed up with pockets of tissues, and it never happened." There was no sadness, no anger, nothing a real widow should feel. Connie's family watched all this, growing increasingly suspicious. Her mother noticed his strange detachment when viewing her daughter's body. His comment about the coffin, "They can put the lid on it now," talking about it like it was a tin box, not his wife's final resting place. On April 14, 2017, police finally had enough. Richard was arrested at his mother's house and charged with murder, tampering with physical evidence, and making false statements to police. Detective Sergeant Pat Murray watched the blood drain from Richard's face when he told him he was under arrest. He went white as a sheet. He wasn't expecting it. Richard pleaded not guilty to all charges and was released on $1 million bail. His family leveraged 5 homes as collateral to secure his freedom. 5 homes. That meant he could walk free for another 5 years while the case worked through the courts. During those 5 years, Richard depleted virtually all of Connie's estate. He withdrew thousands from her accounts for living expenses and legal fees, while her children, the rightful beneficiaries of everything she'd worked for, lived with relatives. The trial and conviction. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed, I'm honestly curious. What's holding you back? Drop it in the comments. I actually want to know. The trial finally began on April 5, 2022, delayed repeatedly by the pandemic, by his attorney's death in 2021, by jury selection. The prosecution presented over 600 pieces of evidence. 600. The Fitbit data proved Connie was alive for an hour after Richard claimed she'd been killed. Sarah Ganza testified through tears about their 30-year relationship, about his promises to divorce Connie, about the pressure his pregnancy created. She testified she never demanded he leave his wife, but had grown frustrated with his constant changes of heart. The prosecution argued that pressure had driven him to murder. Think about this for a moment. What would you do differently if you were in Sarah's position? What would you do if someone you loved kept making promises they never kept? What if your pregnancy was pushing someone closer and closer to the edge? I want to know. Tell us in the comments because your answer might help someone in a similar situation. This is for genuine lovers of these kinds of stories. This is for people who think deeply about how our choices ripple through other people's lives. On May 10, 2022, the jury found him guilty on all charges. At sentencing, the financial betrayal was revealed. Richard had spent virtually all of Connie's estate. Know how much was left for her 2 sons? $6.24. Not enough to buy a shirt or shoes or a backpack. All the money Connie had worked so hard to save for their future, gone. Judge Karen Klatt sentenced him to 65 years in prison. Richard maintained his innocence throughout. "I am here as an innocent man," he said. "I will never stop seeking justice for my wife, Connie, who I love and think of every day." His words meant nothing. They were hollow against months of evidence about his lies, his affair, his theft of his wife's entire legacy. The Connecticut Supreme Court upheld his conviction in January 2025. Richard remains at McDougall Walker Correctional Institution with a maximum release date of May 2, 2087. He will die in prison. Connie's 2 boys now live with their aunt, but something beautiful emerged from this tragedy. The community Connie had served so generously established a college fund for them, a testament to the woman they remembered as the sunshine of so many lives. Her Fitbit may have been the silent witness that exposed her killer, but Connie's true legacy lives on in those who knew her kindness, in those who continue to help her children, in the community she built with her own hands. Her family wants her remembered not for how she died, but for the light she carried. Before you go, I need to remind you about my book, True Crime Survival Guide: How to Stay Safe in a Dangerous World. Written especially for women. It could save your life. Check the description and pinned comment for the link. And please hit that like button, subscribe to Cold Crime Cases, and share this story. Because Connie deserves to be remembered. Because families like hers deserve justice. Because sometimes it takes all of us working together to keep the light alive. As Connie's family said, please don't forget Connie.